Hey bud, it's Helen, licensed therapist, avid reader, and your personal nerd for life on Sincere. Before we get into today's episode, you probably noticed something different. This podcast isn't called Mind anymore, it's now called Sincere, and here's why. Mine started as a space for a thoughtful conversation, but over time it started to feel too clinical, like we were just dissecting thoughts from books. What I really want from this space is to be honest, human, and emotionally clear. Something that goes beyond intellect. Something that reaches the part of you that's tired, searching, and trying to stay grounded. So here's my promise to you. Sincere is about speaking to the part of you with heart, with clarity, and with depth. And that brings us to today's episode. We're talking about how to go through tough times without losing yourself. I've been thinking a lot about resilience, not as something loud, not as something triumphant, but something quiet. The kind of resilience where you don't collapse into numbness or bitterness. The kind where you still recognize yourself on the other side. And weirdly enough, a book on how we learn, Make It Stick by Peter Brown, helped me see that surviving hard seasons is kind of like learning too. So, in today's episode, I want to share 3 powerful lessons from that book and how they can help us hold on to ourselves when everything feels heavy or uncertain. When life gets hard, we often feel like we're unraveling, like we're losing grip on who we are. But what if every struggle we're going through is actually the thing that's shaping you, not breaking you? Today, we're borrowing powerful insights from Make It Stick, a book on how we learn best, to explore how we grow through adversity without losing yourself in the process. Because it turns out learning how to learn might just be the secret to learning how to live. This episode, we'll break down 3 key ideas for Make It Stick. I'm sharing my screen with you now so you see exactly what I'm seeing in the notes that I've taken throughout the book. So the 3 main points I want to talk to you about today is why struggle isn't the enemy. It's actually part of the process. Number 2, how reflection and retrieval build resilience. And finally, number 3, why embracing discomfort leads to lasting growth. So whether you're having loss, burnout, or just in a season of fog, let's talk you through how to get through it so you come out whole. So point number 1, struggle is essential to learning and growth. So from the book, the author, Peter Brown, says that learning that sticks often feels hard. The more that the brain resists, that's when real change actually happens. One of the first lines of the book that I really admire and love is this concept that intuition isn't part of the learning process at first. And life application that shows this and is that when life feels hard, it's not necessarily a sign that something's gone wrong. It might be a sign that you're in the middle of the growth process. And a really great insight that he mentions in the book is that oftentimes someone's intuition when they're parachuting off of a plane, for example, is to not go on. But he paints this example of a woman whose family has been in the military for years, and her bravery was a byproduct of constant practice and repetition, especially when it got hard. And the more that it got harder, the more her brain retained the variability of the information. And by variability, I mean the different ways that she learned how to parachute off, learning to relax in the first 4 to 10 seconds of the parachuting off so that she could account for any risks. And the insight from this first point is don't confuse discomfort for dysfunction. Tough times often teach us more than easy ones. How many times have I played pickleball, for example, and just gone frustrated about the lack of retrieval information that I've gotten hitting the ball back and forth? But what he says is that variability and difficulty is actually a sign that your brain is learning at a faster rate. And one of my favorite quotes from the book with this point is that learning is deeper and more durable when it's effortful. So struggling is essential to learning and to growth. It's not a byproduct of dysfunction. I'll say it again. Struggle is essential to learning and growth. It's not a sign of dysfunction. Point number 2, retrieval, remembering who you are. So a retrieval process, it says, is one of the most powerful forms of learning. A retrieval process is the act of trying to recall what you know. A life application to this is when you're in a hard place, intentional reflection is like retrieving your core self. So part of remembering is journaling, is writing things down, is having honest conversations with yourself. It helps us stick to information more clearly, but also adapt to situations more clearly because retrieval reminds you who you are. It's one of the reasons why in some past episodes, like the Dallas Willard episode or podcast, or if you're a paid subscriber, I provide folks with journaling prompts and exercises on Substack. I use journaling as a way to retrieve your values, your past evidences of resilience or identity. And so an insight to this is we don't just react to tough times, we reflect on tough times. It helps us discover who we are in the moment and retrieve things from a clearer way. And I'll say it again, retrieval allows us to remember who we are. Point number 1 was struggle is not part of dysfunction, it's part of growth. And point number 2, retrieval is remembering who you are. And the action practice of this is having a journaling prompt or exercise allows us to remember who we are, our values, our resilience, and our identity. And so a phrase that I want you to use is to ask yourself, what do I know to be true about me, even in this, even in the grief, even in the change, even in the transition? What is true about me? How am I going to choose to react in this situation? And finally, point number 3, interleaving and embracing discomfort. Now, what is interleaving? Interleaving from the book is mixing different types of problems and solutions. It strengthens learning. Interleaving isn't messy, but it's more effective. A really great insight to this is that they studied hockey players and they studied the difference between repetitive movement and variability. Variability is when they had hockey players do one move for 1 minute, another move for another minute, and forgive me for my lack of jargon and vocabulary with hockey. I'm not a hockey player, but for the sake of application, they found that variability with practice and spacing out moves that required repetitiveness or consistency allowed things to stick. It strengthens our learning. And so what does that mean for you who might be going through a hard time? Well, life doesn't give us one lesson at a time. It interleaves grief, love, work, pain, and joy. And so learning to live in the tension of what life gives us is the key. And the insight to this is that growth doesn't look linear, and that's okay. And so an encouragement for you is discomfort now might mean transformation later. And so discomfort in seasons doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. It's what life throws at us, and it's part of life. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it better. But part of seeing life in newness and in transition is the understanding that growth doesn't always look linear. So takeaway and final point in this book, you don't have to come out of every storm with answers, but if you come out of it yourself, still rooted, still aware of your values, still growing, that's enough. Make it stick reminds us that the most meaningful change doesn't happen when things are easy. It happens when we stay present in the struggle. So the next time life gets hard, don't ask, how do I get out of this? Ask instead, what am I learning from this? So I want to give you some homework if you're up for it. I really like to give the how behind how to grow through struggle, because when I'm listening to a podcast episode, I get the science and the insight behind it, but I never get the actionable tools. And I want to give you 2 journaling prompts. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'll read it out loud. Prompt number 1, what's one moment of struggle that taught you something lasting? I'll say it again. What's one moment of struggle that taught you something lasting? And, one thing that I'd like to point out is that in retrospect, people always say that hindsight is 20/20. And there are moments when we reflect on struggles that we sort of find ways that we can adapt and we can move out of these states. The next episode I'm going to talk about is Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's diagnosis and the biography that he's written about it. And I really enjoy how he talks about Parkinson's disease as a way to stay present, as a gift that's sometimes not a gift, but it teaches him to take one step at a time, to slow down, to become aware of his vices. Journaling prompt number 2, what part of yourself do you want to hold on to, even in hard times? In point number 2, I talked about how retrieval and a reflection practice was important to remind yourself who you are. And that's what's important here. So there are moments where we go through hard times and you have to be able to ask yourself, what part do you want to hold on to, even in the hard times? My name is Helen Garcia. This was an episode of Growing Through Tough Times Without Losing Yourself, inspired by the book Make It Stick by Peter Brown. If you liked this episode, please subscribe or please rate and review this podcast. It would really help get this out to more people. And more importantly, if you want written text or behind the scenes takeaways, you can pay for the Substack subscription, or you can get a free newsletter subscription, 1 newsletter a week, 2 a week if you're a subscriber. And I'll see you next Friday.